I've seen this concerted effort from a lot of these far left people, the blue check mark brigade, and it just seems like the existence, the mere mention of the existence of the Snyder Cut really upsets them.
Well, Gal Gadot has something to say about Wonder Woman 1984 that goes directly against the narrative that Brie Larson was trying to spread and continues to spread with her movies and her craziness.
The word that he wants Kathleen Kennedy out. He actually does, but nobody will take her job.
Recently, Kathleen Kennedy was fired from a major Star Wars project that was going to be a new Star Wars TV series to be released in 2022. Now, it's noted that one of the big reasons as to why Kathleen Kennedy was fired from the Star Wars project had to do with Kennedy hiring the wrong type of creators behind George Lucas's and Bob Chapek's back without any approval.
So we've been covering anti-SJWs for a long time on this channel. Now, after I made that video on Friday about the Snyder Cut and the reaction of anti-SJWs and geeks and gamers to Snyder essentially calling them out, it got me thinking, because a lot of people pointed out in the comments, why do these people think the Snyder Cut movement is pro-conservative and only for conservatives, and everyone who hates the Snyder Cut or doesn't like it or think it's ridiculous, you know, cut a movie that was bad by a director who's made bad films to re-release this, you know, original version of it or whatever. Anyone who doesn't like that apparently is some sort of SJW leftist or something. So it got me thinking about other videos I've made about these groups and how they often construct a ridiculous narrative to suit their political agenda. And I know that sounds ironic from the same people who say, get your politics out of my video games or my comic books or my TV shows, but it's what these guys do. I've said this before, it's essentially like a fan fiction of reality where they just totally make up stuff or cast, you know, people as villains and heroes and ignore a lot of the other things they do. But today we're going to go back to the Snyder Cut. We're also going to talk about the Brie Larson versus Gal Gadot stuff, where they say that Brie Larson is bad feminist SJW, Gal Gadot isn't for some reason. And then we're also going to talk about Star Wars, Kathleen Kennedy versus Jon Favreau. Just this absolutely ridiculous stuff they totally and utterly just make up. Like, just pull out a lie and make it a clickbait video. Because at the end of the day, it all ties back into that as well. Not only is it to suit their political agenda, it's to suit the revenue stream they make on YouTube. Before we go any further, recently YouTube demonetized my entire channel, supposedly for bullying. What had actually happened is I'd been mass flagged by some community or some fans. Thankfully, after bigger creators like the Humanist Report, the Surfs, Carl Kolinsky and Wowshi retweeted the tweet, YouTube went back on its policies, but it's shown me how fragile this is as a source of income. So if you want to support my work continuing for the future, regardless of what YouTube do, please consider becoming a patron. If you want to join our growing community, please check out the Discord and the subreddit in the description. And if you want to follow me personally, check out @the_Kavernacle on Instagram and Twitter. And also u/TommyCahill1995 for my personal Reddit. I also stream 2 times a week on Tuesday and Thursday for now. Probably going to change next month. But some of you have asked for this, but I've put the streams on my second channel, the Kavernacle Extra. I'll put the link in the description because if you just search for Kavernacle, I think it's just my videos that come up. But go check that out if you somehow want more content from me. So I made a video about Zack Snyder, Geeks and Gamers and Anti-SJWs on Friday. So go have a look at that if you haven't already. But essentially what happened is Zack Snyder came on a charity stream with these Anti-SJWs and basically said, you know, he doesn't agree with the hate that I guess Geeks and Gamers pushes and stuff like that.
We're really not affiliated with Geeks and Gamers as far as I'm concerned, and there's no room for hate.
Now, before that, they were all on board for the Snyder Cut, praising Zack Snyder as some sort of anti-SJW crusader, painting anyone who didn't want to see the Snyder Cut or didn't want it to exist as a leftist. Again, why do you have to be left-wing to not want the Snyder Cut? Or what is left-wing about not liking this stuff? Is it because I guess left-wing people have better taste? And I guess they're more cynical about a 4-hour version of a bad movie from people who make generally pretty terrible superhero movies and can see it as like a corporate cash grab, a corporate double dipping. Maybe I guess you have to be left-wing to see that, but I've also seen a lot of right-wing people, conservatives, not like the Snyder Cut, not care about it, not wanting it to happen. So let's get into what these guys were painting it as before Zack Snyder dunked on them hilariously last week.
It is Jeremy, joined by Rian, Kennel, and Lethal Lightning, two mega Zack Snyder fans, two people that I can't even imagine how good it feels to be them today because of the long-awaited, the long battle, the announcement of the Snyder Cut. I've seen this concerted effort from a lot of these far-left people, the blue check mark brigade, and it just seems like the existence, the mere mention of the existence of the Snyder Cut really, really upsets them. I respect this man, and I have talked about how much I do respect him as a person, as a dude, and as a director. I like a lot of his movies. I just don't like his DCEU. And this is exactly why I love and respect Zack Snyder so much, because he is a grown-ass man. He's actually talking to people like my friends talk to me and I talk to my friends. He's talking to you like you're a normal human being, because that's who Zack Snyder is. And I really, really appreciate this guy so much.
We're really not affiliated with Geeks and Gamers as far as I'm concerned, and there's no room for hate.
What I just listened to Zack Snyder do to me, and I do believe he slandered me. Well, today he destroyed Scott Mendelson of Forbes. We all know who Scott Mendelson is. Scott Mendelson, always pandering to the social justice nonsense out there, and Zack Snyder absolutely destroyed him, and it is a beautiful thing.
So again, this stuff is just so hilarious considering what happened to Geeks and Gamers, and also their reaction to what Zack Snyder said, that he was slandering them. But this whole thing is just so bizarre to me. It's like, why do you think Zack Snyder is some sort of anti-SJW crusader? Why do you think the left hate the Snyder Cut and it makes them really mad and stuff? I literally couldn't care. I'm not going to watch it. For someone who's left-wing, I don't care about the Snyder Cut. I kind of do see it as like a corporate double dipping. Doesn't make my blood boil though, doesn't make me very mad. I don't think it's art or anything, I just think it's, you know, a cash grab. I haven't seen any left-wing people that it makes mad, but they're constructing a narrative here, right? Zack Snyder is anti-SJW. The Snyder Cut is led by conservatives, and if you don't like it, then you're probably a social justice warrior who wants the Joss Whedon movie back, even though Joss Whedon has proven to be a worse person than Zack Snyder. Now, like I said, if we think about this politically, it's bizarre because it makes no sense, but it's clear people like this are trying to paint this narrative, create this fan fiction to further their political agenda, because these guys do have a political agenda, but also really helps with their content. You've got to frame this. So Zack Snyder on your side, people who write for Forbes and don't like the Snyder Cut on the left side. And, you know, as we always say in these channels, the left are trying to ruin everything. The SJWs are trying to ruin all your video games and movies, so someone like Zack Snyder becomes this sort of god figure for them. And then, like I said, you can see in this example how it's totally ridiculous because he's actually not like that and he called them out. So it shows you in this prime example how this is just an invented narrative. But we're going to go forward into a more ridiculous example. So I already made a video on this, but just to put it in my narratives video, this video here, Brie Larson versus Gal Gadot. So apparently, to the anti-SJWs, Brie Larson is very scary feminist. If you go on any of their channels, they've realised she brings in the clicks. Hating on her brings in the clicks. Now, they originally hated Brie Larson because she said she wanted more diversity in film critic circles. So I'll probably play this clip for you right now.
That 67% of the top critics reviewing the 100 highest grossing movies in 2017 were white males. Am I saying that I hate white dudes? No, I'm not. But what I am saying is that if you make a movie that is a love letter to women of color, there is an insanely low chance a woman of color will have the chance to see your movie and review your movie. I do not need a 40-year-old white dude to tell me what didn't work for him about A Wrinkle in Time. It wasn't made for him.
So that stuff is actually pretty tame. I don't think it's something to freak out about. But there you go. There's your villain. There is Brie Larson. And watch all these channels, mainly Star Wars ones, who keep talking about Brie Larson apparently being cast and then fired out of a Kathleen Kennedy Star Wars series, but they have no real information to back this up. Again, just a villain for them. Where Gal Gadot, who is involved in the Justice League films, Wonder Woman, apparently she's not a feminist like Brie Larson. She's not an SJW like Brie Larson. But let's get into a video that they made about her where she talks about Wonder Woman being for boys and girls. And apparently that means she's not this feminist like Brie Larson.
Do you remember when Brie Larson said to the critics of A Wrinkle in Time, who were, in her words, a bunch of 40-year-old white dudes, that the movie wasn't made for them? Well, Gal Gadot has something to say about Wonder Woman 1984 that goes directly against the narrative that Brie Larson was trying to spread and continues to spread with her movies and her craziness. And I really appreciate what Gal Gadot says here.
Maybe it brought emotions upon you because here you are suiting up for the second time in this iconic role, and you're a mom of 2 daughters.
Yeah, that too, for sure. I'm sure. But I gotta tell you, it's not just for the girls. It is for the girls, but we can't reach the place where we're gonna stop talking about female, men, you know, women empowerment, feminism, and all that before we work on both, you know, female and male. Like, we can't just empower women only by focusing on women. We also need to educate the boys and the men. So, you know, a young boy that goes to see in the cinema this amazing woman that does those amazing things, that he can believe a woman could do that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So it goes both ways.
And I completely agree with what Gal Gadot says here, and I think that what she says there is very wise and is something that a lot more people in Hollywood need to kind of come to grips with. We totally can see what is happening right now with the feminist movement in Hollywood, at least with a lot of the feminist movement happening in Hollywood, where they want to prop women up but tear men down.
So that video from a Geeks and Gamers affiliated channel is called, like, Gal Gadot destroys Brie Larson feminist narrative, right? But even from what he showed there, I don't think that's some sort of, like, anti-feminist narrative. He's basically saying, I want to show Wonder Woman as this great, powerful woman to women, but I also hope men see it and boys see it to be educated that women can be like a powerful role model or something like that. I really don't understand how that's against anything Brie Larson said. I wonder what these guys would think about this quote. Wonder Woman star Gal Gadot says, anyone who is not a feminist is a sexist. Again, that is pretty explicit. It seems a bit more explicit than anything Brie Larson has ever said on the issue. There's also multiple videos online where Gal Gadot is talking about feminism. And again, this is what I want to highlight to you. The narratives they create for these videos are just so ridiculous and they're so made up. Gal Gadot and Brie Larson probably would share the same sort of ideology when it comes to feminism. There's nothing I've really seen them say that really goes at odds with each other, but to them, because Brie Larson called out white men, then she is evil, she is the villain, whereas Gal Gadot said, I want boys to see this, to be educated about, you know, women being a good role model. Apparently she destroys the feminist narrative right there. Again, it's not the truth. Gal Gadot, just like Zack Snyder, isn't really on these guys' side, but what they do is, like I said, construct the narrative. Zack Snyder and the Snyder Cut versus the left-wing feminist SJWs. Brie Larson, evil, SJW, gonna make 1,000 videos on how she's really bad. But Gal Gadot is a massive hero who destroys the feminist narrative whenever she can. Again, ridiculous. Now, those are more for political reasons. Now, going into this one as well, this one is a bit political. It's also so ridiculous. So I made a big video on the fandom menace, the Star Wars fans, who are totally against the new Star Wars movies, not because they're necessarily bad, because they're bad movies. I think 9 is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Bad because they've been infested with SJW politics. And I've made multiple videos how this is ridiculous because the original Star Wars, where the rebels were based on the Viet Cong, NLF, and the Empire were America. George Lucas has said this explicitly.
The thing with Star Wars, if you think about it, the good guys are the rebels.
Viet Cong.
Exactly. So were you thinking of that at the time?
Yes. The rebels were based, the prequel films are very, very, very political. They're essentially all about politics, all about things, you know, Reichstag fire type stuff, George Lucas said the Emperor is in part based on Richard Nixon. Sounds pretty SJW to me, but those guys love those movies. But what recently has happened is they've constructed a new narrative. Yes, and I've spoken about this before, where Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are these crusaders for good storytelling, not infected by SJW politics, whereas Kathleen Kennedy and Rian Johnson are ruining Star Wars with their politics. Now, I would find it very strange if these guys that I all mentioned weren't all pretty standard liberals, because that's what they seem in their work. I couldn't really imagine Dave Filoni, watching as many interviews as I have with him throughout the years, is conservative at all. I'm not sure about Jon Favreau. I just imagine he's a typical centrist lib as well. Rian Johnson and Kathleen Kennedy, I'm not sure about, but I'd say, based on what they've said, they're at least liberals. But these guys make up this conflict. So apparently in lots of instances to them, Kathleen Kennedy is always getting fired. She's always just about to get fired, or people have decided she's going to be fired. Bob Iger used to decide she was fired, and now there's a civil war within Disney between Jon Favreau and Kathleen Kennedy. So here's just a little montage of some of the videos I found.
Top brass from not just Star Wars, but also Marvel and Pixar were also in on the call, but listening only. Likely at the request of Bob Iger, who wants their advice on how to fix this show. And yes, he does know it's a shit show. Evidence? The word that he wants Kathleen Kennedy out. He actually does, but nobody will take her job. Several have been approached but turned it down, including J.J. Abrams, who turned it down flat and didn't even hesitate.
However, behind the scenes over at Lucasfilm, many changes have been made by creators like George Lucas and even the Disney CEO, Bob Chapek. Recently, Kathleen Kennedy was fired from a major Star Wars project that was going to be a new Star Wars TV series to be released in 2022. Now, it's noted that one of the big reasons as to why Kathleen Kennedy was fired from the Star Wars project had to do with Kennedy hiring the wrong type of creators behind George Lucas's and Bob Chapek's back without any approval. However, when Kathleen Kennedy was running one of the most important Star Wars projects within her own universe at the time that she was planning, it's described that George Lucas had fired Kathleen Kennedy from such project that was said to involve actress Brie Larson, which at the time was considered Brie's second Star Wars project. Now, Kathleen Kennedy was ultimately fired by both George Lucas and Bob Chapek, the new Disney CEO, after attempting to actually drastically change the philosophy of Star Wars and trying to retcon the original trilogy movies through her new TV series for Disney Plus that was going to be set sometime before the events of Episode 1.
About a potential civil war brewing within the walls of Lucasfilm. And I believe this has a lot of credibility, considering it's something I have heard about what's going on at Lucasfilm in the previous months. When you have, what I have heard is you have the old school Star Wars, OG side at Lucasfilm. Then you have this new feminist side, this SJW side that Kathleen Kennedy has brought in. And when you have those two equations, it's almost logical to think that they're going to have a big problem at some point when it comes to the forward vision of Star Wars. Also, it comes from WDW Pro, so this is someone that has seemed to have some really good inside information in terms of what's going on at Disney. But if you look at the vision of Favreau and the vision of Kennedy, I can totally see how those two scenarios could collide.
Now, there's a guy called Mike Xero, and he's not explicitly political, but he does make a lot of these videos on Brie Larson being in a Star Wars thing. And it's just such a lie. He never backs it up with any evidence. There's never any mainstream evidence. There's sometimes anti-leftist Star Wars blogs writing about these stuff according to a rumor they heard, but it's always a lie. Always, always, always a lie. Pedro Pascal, who they often leave out, is of course very left-wing. He's a child of socialists who fled Pinochet's Chile. They leave him out, and they just stick Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. And apparently Mandalorian doesn't have any politics. Just like most Star Wars things, it seems to be pretty political to me. Not that I always agree with it, but it has a political message about the Empire versus the New Republic, and about, the Tusken Raiders are finally treated with some respect. I'd say that's a political choice, and I'd say there are politics in The Mandalorian. Mandalorian is just a good show. Episode 9 is not a good movie. So they've just changed it around where the good show has no politics and is not catering to SJWs, despite having a moment right at the end of the second season where all the women team up together to fight stormtroopers, just like that scene at the end of Avengers. But these guys love that in this context, but when it's Avengers or anything else, or like Ghostbusters, or the all-female Oceans movies, then it's for SJWs and it's pandering. But in the context of The Mandalorian, it's fine. But it's all about narrative. So Kathleen Kennedy is the person ruining everything. Like she's a dictator of Disney, like she's writing every single script, like she's directing every single movie. Not that someone like J.J. Abrams made a total dumpster fire of a movie that essentially looked like it was written by prequel memes on Reddit, and that Dave Filoni is obviously the successor to George Lucas, which he is, but do you think Dave Filoni then somehow wouldn't be influenced by his politics or share a bit of a political ideology with George Lucas, considering they worked together on this show, The Clone Wars, which is extremely political, just like the prequels, made by George Lucas, and has loads of messages about, for example, the clones. The clones being essentially these slaves, and do they have humanity? That's a big theme in this show. There's other things about how the Republic treats different minority groups and different planets. There's loads of politics in this show. And Dave Filoni was one of the driving forces behind this stuff. But to these guys, politics means more representation of women and women in leading roles. If it's made in collaboration with Kathleen Kennedy, but when you have strong female characters in The Mandalorian, they don't care, especially if they're female characters played by actors who have extreme right-wing politics like Gina Carano, because now she is their new champion. Again, narrative. So to conclude, let's talk about why they do this. So it's clear all these guys have a political agenda. Now, Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers is a big Trump supporter, has actually a politics channel as well. So it's pretty clear why he would want to put his politics onto all this stuff and make this political narrative about Zack Snyder, about the Snyder Cut, versus people who don't like it. He does this loads of Star Wars as well. So if this guy has a more political motive where he wants to indoctrinate more people in his politics, I can see why he does that. But like I said, at the end of the day, while this is slightly motivated by their politics, I feel like they create these narratives to create series and series and series of videos where they can keep playing into this narrative. So the Brie Larson vs Gal Gadot thing is ridiculous, but you need a hero and you need a villain. It makes good clickbait, it makes a good thumbnail. Same with Kathleen Kennedy versus Jon Favreau. Here is your hero who made something you like. Here is Kathleen Kennedy who is part of something you don't like. One has bad politics, left-wing politics, ruining everything. One guy is apolitical, doesn't let politics affect his work. And then you can keep making loads of videos on that. And if you're someone like that Mike Xero guy, you can just make stuff up based on this narrative. Again, fan fiction about the real world, because the sources they always use are very dubious, like The Express, or made up sources from right-wing blogs, or they take stuff out of context, or in the case of Gal Gadot, they ignore context because she said 3 years before that video was made that anyone who's not a feminist is a sexist. Anyway, I thought I'd just make this video because a lot of you have been noticing these themes of these people just making stuff up, and it just seems so bizarre. So I thought I'd break it down, show the multiple times they've done this, and explain why they might have done it. But if you like the video, please leave a like. If you want to follow me on social media, check me out at the Kavernacle on Twitter and Instagram. Come follow my personal Reddit page, which I linked at the start. Also check out the subreddit and the Discord to join the community. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon as well. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.